Hi, this video is sponsored by my dad Twitch channel. Without it, there would have been no game footage for most of the things I'm talking about, and there is absolutely no way I'd play through half the game again just to get it. That being said, there's still no footage for about half of the points I'm making, so this is basically a podcast, I guess. If you were to play the release version of Bloodborne now, I bet you'd be pretty shocked by how blatantly unfinished and undercooked the game was when the world played it for the first time. Have you tried it? You should, it's quite fascinating to be honest. There are several very interesting things about it too, in addition to all the jank. Yet somehow I can't find many people talking about that, aside of the obvious things, of course. Okay, but before I start talking about Bloodborne, I am legally obligated to state that I'm a huge fan of the Souls series. Started with Demons, which is still my favorite. I barely touched Dark 3, could only stomach about 1.5 playthroughs of it. After which I found a whole new appreciation for Dark 2, which I initially hated but now like quite a lot. Maybe something similar will happen to my feelings towards Dark 3 at some point, but so far no sign of it. Maybe if Dark 4 comes out and somehow it is even more unbearable. Between Demons and Dark 1, I've got somewhere around 3,000 to 4,000 hours. Impossible to count precisely now. Dark 2, well, it's complicated. I like it now, but I definitely don't feel like playing it a lot. So maybe a few hundred hours, give it or take. And Bloodborne, while totally fantastic, don't get me wrong, my experience with it boils down to somewhat similar territory. I don't feel much replayability in it at all. And yes, Chalice dungeons are partially to blame, but even without those, a pretty linear progression and way too late availability of most of the interesting weapons. The thought of starting a new game of Bloodborne mostly just makes me sigh and experience the here we go again feeling rather than excitement. Replaying Bloodborne, especially with a specific build in mind, in my opinion is pretty much a chore. But hey, if you've been looking for new Bloodborne experiences, the 1.0 version, or 0.0 as it calls itself, will definitely give you those, and it's a very good incentive to squeeze another playthrough or two out of the game, especially if your feelings towards its replayability are similar to mine. All you need to do is find an original disc copy of the game, not the PlayStation Hits one. No. That one is essentially the Old Hunters, also known as Game of the Year edition. So yeah, no, just the original copy. And maybe disable network connection on your PS4, otherwise you're gonna have to repause or cancel the patch download every time you turn on the console and every time you launch the game. It is kind of ridiculous, but hey, welcome to a modern console gaming experience. Alright, back to the topic. So I mentioned the obvious things in which the OG Bloodborne is different. Let's start with those. This is also the first part of the video, I think. Yeah, I'm gonna be calling it the cool stuff. Number one, by far the biggest one,
the coffin jump skip.
You probably know this one. Literally 5 minutes into the game, there used to be a way to skip literally half of it. It did require extremely finicky timed 2 jumps. In fact, it's not just one. And those were exploiting basically how colliders and just jumping in general works in pretty much all of the Souls games. There's even the same exact kind of jump you can do in Dark 3. Again, pretty much 5 minutes into it, that allows you to access the Firelink Shrine skybox. You know the one I'm talking about, the one you do off a side of a tree. Well, Bloodborne used to have one as well. It allowed you to skip straight to the Forbidden Woods, as well as Yosefka Clinic, of course. Yeah, at the very beginning of the game. So why is it bad that we don't have this skip anymore? As I mentioned before, Bloodborne is a pretty linear experience if you don't count the fact that about 50% of the game is optional. I say it doesn't count. because unlike Dark 1, optional things in Bloodborne never double as alternate paths to other destinations. They all are dead ends or even flat out standalone levels. Dark 1 is full of skips and alternate paths, and most are there by design. Dark 2, not as much, but there are definitely more options there than in Bloodborne. What I'm trying to say is that even if you were to patch out every techie jump you can make in Dark 1, there would still be tons of paths left for you to take, to take you through the game. In Bloodborne, there are no such things, really. The coffin jump was pretty much the only real skip you could do without triggering an outright bug. Things like forcing your character outside of level geometry, you know the stuff. And now we don't have it. There's an alternative, actually. As far as I know, it was never patched. However, I think it still sucks that we don't have the coffin jump, because sometimes you can block yourself from the alternative way of doing this skip by sheer instinct. The very first enemy you meet in the game, the friendly wolfie in the clinic that doesn't have full health for some reason, if you get it to bite you while facing away from the locked gate on your right as you exit the clinic, standing right next to it obviously, the animation of being bitten phases your character through the gate. Boom bam, access to Forbidden Woods. In the 1.0 version, you can also do it with one of the corners inside the clinic, I think, but I don't remember which one, and I think that part of the bug was actually patched. Question mark? I don't know. The problem with the wolf bite skip, let's call it that, is that obviously sometimes you can kill the wolf on sight without even thinking. It's an enemy, and it doesn't respawn. That enemy is just one-time kill, one-time spawn. You kill it, can't do the skip. Okay, so why was it patched? I suppose the official reason is that while the skip itself is not particularly buggy, it does cause problems. Unlike Demons, Dark 1 or 2, Bloodborne's world is not static, it goes through phases. And when you enter the Forbidden Woods, that is the trigger that starts the night phase, which in turn breaks pretty much all the quests lines that begin earlier than that, because you kind of skip all of them, right? You wouldn't want that to be someone's first experience of the game, for sure. Okay, so yeah. Someone does the skip accidentally equals bad time. Okay, but what about all the other experiences? And what about the fact that performing the skip by accident is nearly impossible? This leads me to the final question. Why is it stupid that we don't have this skip anymore? In no way getting to do this jump could be considered a glitch. Well, maybe a little bit, but you ain't phasing through any solid walls by doing it. You're not exploiting the game's autosave system, i.e. Closing the game mid-fall or like 1 millisecond after dying due to a fall, so that when you load the game back, it either places you on the same spot alive or even outside of the level geometry completely, allowing you to basically no-clip your way to a whole other part of the game. It's not even close to that, any of that. Yet every Souls game allows for those kind of exploits, and those are never fixed. Including the one, by the way, that unlike the coffin jump actually can happen to a player accidentally at the very beginning of the game nonetheless, the aforementioned wolfy bitey thingy. Both technically break the story and quest progression, yes. In fact, both are just different ways to do the same exact skip. Yet coffin jump is borderline impossible to do accidentally. It was patched. The other, wolfy, can totally happen to anyone. Never fixed. Now that's priorities, right? Screw the hardcore community that knows what they're doing, but keep the actual glitches in. Okay, next, number 2. Cannon was great. It used to consume 10 bullets instead of 12, making it possible to fire 4 times instead of 2 without having to equip any bullet runes, and providing you with freedom to equip, something more useful instead. In addition, I'm not sure about the exact numbers, but I think the damage used to be significantly higher too. I feel like maybe 20 or even 30% up. Between the nerf damage and the increased bullet consumption, Cannon is pretty much complete garbage and no fun to use at all now. Number 3.
Loading screen and load times.
This one is a little bit off topic here because I do want to talk about general performance in a minute or so, but I suppose I need to mention the OG loading screen here due to its meme status, and because yes, it's one of the obvious things that were different in the OG version of Bloodborne that everyone knows about. So, okay, well, yes, the loading screen is stupid. I think it was simply not finished by the time the game went gold. Just like the rest of the game, actually. Load times, however, are not all the same, at least on PS4 Pro. Back in the day, I only played the OG Bloodborne for about 8 hours on a normal PS4, and yeah, I think I do remember load times to be pretty long, about a minute long, maybe 50-ish seconds. Later, when playing the old Hunters on, again, a normal PS4, I remember them being pretty much the same, maybe a few seconds faster, not significantly though. However, now playing on the Pro, well, to start with, I can say there's a very big difference in load time, depending on your destination. Boost mode enabled or not, it doesn't take more than 10 seconds to load into a dream. Also lecture building, just FYI. From the dream to somewhere in Yharnam, yeah, it takes more, but still far from a whole minute. 20, maybe 25 seconds, I really don't think it's even 30, like ever. So yeah, if you play in the Pro, even the 1.0 version of the game has load times that are no longer a joke. In fact, they are better than the load times of the patched version on a normal PS4, for sure. To sum up, on PS4 Pro the load times are really good. And I'm talking about the original version of the game. Even turning the boost mode off doesn't make them much or even at all slower. Really. Now to something more interesting.
Performance.
This one is kind of funny. The OG version ran like garbage fire, but I think with time it was patched into something somewhat acceptable because I don't remember seeing frame rate dropping below 29, say, all that often when playing the old Hunters on a normal PS4 in 2016, I think. Yeah. Well, in 2020, playing the OG version on a PS4 Pro gives you literally the same experience, if not better, with boost enabled. And yeah, I am absolutely serious. It's pretty much as perfect as 30 FPS can get. Yep. Without boost enabled, yeah, oh my bejesus, it's bad, really bad. The whole thing I'm recommending here, yeah, only get the 1.0 version if you have the Pro. On a normal PS4, I don't think the experiment, is worth it. Unfortunately, no amount of patches or PS4 revisions can heal the 30 FPS cap, or the terrible AA FromSoft chose to use that causes horrific chromatic aberration and makes everything that is not dead center of the screen incredibly blurry. Full-priced PS5 remaster, you ask? Yeah, you bet, I'd say. Oh, and yeah, when there are lots of enemies on the screen at once, the game cuts the amount of frames of their animation. Seems like in half. It's kind of a normal practice, but, well, still, probably worth saying that it doesn't look particularly the greatest. And I don't remember if they were able to optimize the game enough to disable this. Maybe? It doesn't really matter much anyways. There's like 1.5 plays where it happens. So, yeah, just kind of wanted to note this one here, but not a big deal. And now the last part of the video.
The negatives.
The negatives. So those were all cool and or interesting things about the original version and its behavior on PS4 Pro, which is totally cool, actually, unlike the behavior of the game on the original hardware. However, there is a whole other layer to it, a negative one. Non-game breaking glitches and lack of pretty much any kind of polish, mostly with graphics and audio, is what you should be expecting. Do you notice those kind of things, like all the time? Do they take you out of the experience? Heck yeah. Do they stand in the way of playing the game? No, not really. So is there even a point talking about those things? I honestly don't know, but since what I'm doing here is essentially saying, go get the OG version of the game, it's cool and different, I should probably mention that. I should probably mention what else to expect from it, other than all the good stuff. Because, the good comes with the bad, for sure. I should probably say that if somehow these problems are PS4 Pro exclusive, somehow I doubt it though, but still, okay, sorry, my bad. Well, actually only half sorry, because it's not like PS4 Pro is a rare thing to own these days, so no matter how you rotate what I'm about to say, it is still true for a lot of people. Problem number 1. Terrible load-in of assets, also known as pop-in. So terrible, actually, that for a while I was hand-waving it like away, thinking maybe the boost mode is somehow causing it. Maybe. No, it does not. And I'm not talking about Unreal Engine's trademark texture load-in, even though there's some of that too sometimes when you lamp teleport into a level, but it happens extremely rare and takes less than a second. I'm talking about objects and parts of level geometry, just complete whole walls, floors, stairs, entire buildings, popping into existence right before your eyes, like magic. Sometimes literally right in front of your face. Sometimes somewhat in the distance, but even then, never subtle. Mostly dead center of the screen, exactly where your eye's at. Oh yeah, and sometimes the floor is just missing. Now, this problem comes in two different forms. One is sorta understandable, the engine, not being fast enough to load all the assets in the surrounding area. I mean, once the asset is loaded, it stays there, doesn't go anywhere. Everything is fine. That mostly happens to statues, of which Yarnum has a lot. Objectively, way too much. I mean, it looks cool, but come on, also stupid at the same time, Well, get used to them coming into existence on camera, anywhere between like 3 to 30 meters away from your character. It happens all the time, and you will be noticing it pretty much all the time. The other form of load-in is based on draw distance. You'll know what I'm talking about. You take one step forward, an object appears in a distance. You take a step back, the object disappears. Usually in good games, it either happens at a significant distance, so even if it's somewhat noticeable, the object is small and it is really far away, so all in all, not a big problem. Or it happens outside of camera's view. Say, stuff is being loaded, or loaded in, I suppose, while it's behind corners or some other objects, Game can be kind of smart about those things. Well, BB says to hell with all that, we'll set draw distance for some entire buildings and part of the effing floor. In the middle of the scenery, the camera is viewing to like 20 meters, or maybe 50 with buildings. This again happens all the time, but in this case it's not a hiccup of an unoptimized engine. It was designed to distance-based render these objects like this. And it baffles you every time it happens because you're not going out of your way to expose this kind of behavior. It is pretty much always right in the middle of the screen, right where you're looking at. There was absolutely no attempt to hide it in any way. And in some cases, all you'd have to do to fix it is just start rendering the stuff just like a dozen meters earlier. Was it not obvious during even like early stages of getting the levels together in the engine that if a whole staircase renders dead middle of the screen when like you're standing 20 meters away from it, it's kind of noticeable. Or if a building taking 50% of the background does the same thing at like 50 meters, again, right in the middle of the screen. Problem number 2, audio is absolutely broken. By the way, feel free to criticize how I say audio, because sometimes it's audio, sometimes it's audio. With me, I don't know what's going on. Just maybe we should let it go. Luckily, most people don't bother with things that are not graphics or gameplay, so there's a high chance you won't notice the things I'm about to bitch about. So, start with, dynamic range is ridiculous. If they fixed it at some point, great, but somehow I doubt it. I will happily eat my words if my assumption is wrong, by the way. So yeah, it's terrible. All the action-related sound effects are way too loud relative to the ambient like sound floor of the game, as well as music and dialogue. Those are also kind of mixed together relatively well, but then you have the action sound effects, and those are just ridiculously loud. When nothing is happening, you feel like the game is too quiet. But then you attack, and like you attack an enemy and it wakes up your entire neighborhood. And you're using headphones too. Still works the way I described it. In fact, the loud parts of the game are so hot. On some of the loudest sound effects, you can clearly hear distortion. You can hear audio output clipping even at the default volume of 7 out of 10. Things like the pig explosion, visceral attacks, the sound effect of entering a new area, or the ones for defeating a boss or picking up your blood echoes. If you know anything about audio, Bloodborne, or at least its original version, I want to be fair, is gonna make you want to apply a compressor to it. Okay, so if some sound effects are mixed so loud the master is already clipping on them at the default volume of 7 out of 10, what do you think happens to the audio if you take the volume slider further? This happens. Oh yeah, get a load of this. So, I tested it yesterday on several equipment pieces just to make sure that it's not some kind of bug that maybe the capture card is causing. Get a load of this. This is gonna be kinda loud. Check this out. Audio clipping much? What the fuck? Yep, completely broken, I know. Why are we even allowed to go higher than 7 if 7 is already the loudest you can go without distortion? Why wasn't the level of 7, the level of volume at 7 made the maximum and renamed into 10? Like, what the actual... Also, the visceral attack sound cue doesn't play half the time, mostly when you do a backstab. Doesn't really break anything, with or without it. It's pretty obvious when the enemy is open for a visceral. Plus the sound cue is so loud, I'm perfectly fine with occasionally not hearing it. To sum up, audio mixing in BB needed to be adjusted. I don't know if it has been at any point. Potentially it's audio listener component, aka it's like master output component, component of the engine tweaked a little bit. Not necessarily though. I mean, just remixing itself would have fixed the overloading output issue, I think. So yeah, I'm not sure if it has been done at some point or not, because while I don't remember the problem with the complete master overloading, if you set the volume higher than 7, being there when I was playing the old Hunters, but I'm also not sure if I've actually ever tried setting it up higher than 7. But the overall problem of the louder sound effects being hot to the point of distortion was definitely there when I played the Old Hunters. The last thing I just kind of want to mention is that I'm pretty sure the boss fight with the Shadows of Yharnam is completely bugged in the OG version. Okay, first of all, no music. Period. Never, ever. Any kind of hint of music, even. Additionally, I died on my first attempt, and for the second one, I had to cross a fog wall. Well, this is how it looked. Wow. Unpatched Bloodborne. There it is. Yep. There may be more bugs later in the game, but I'll be honest with you, this is where, for now, I stopped main progression-wise. If I discover anything major and or interesting later, I'll probably make another video, but for now, I pretty much told you all I know. I'm playing Shadow of the Colossus remake at the moment, and also Code Vein is staring me in the face, which, unlike Bloodborne, I never played, so right now I'm tilting towards it a little, you know? And then there will be Cyberpunk. Oh, also, how did this happen? And yeah, this is all I wanted to say, really. The 1.0 version is substantially different. If you haven't played it, I think you should. I recommend getting a strength build going, because you'll probably want to play around with cannon, due to it actually being fun and not torturous to use. That's one experience the patched Bloodborne cannot offer you. That's kind of cool in my opinion, and probably worth trying out. Thank you for watching. I hope you found the video interesting or informative, something along those lines. You might have noticed I'm not a real YouTuber, so I don't know if some other videos are coming, ever, and even if they are, I cannot imagine when. But I started streaming on Twitch again, and at the moment I do it pretty often. Don't know how long I'll last this time, so maybe drop by, tell me I suck at video games and just in general at life, if you see me there. All possible links should be in the description. Okay, not wasting any more of your time, you'll have a great one. Possibly see you later. Eat, drink, stay safe. Bye-bye.